Hey, welcome back to another special episode of Lead the People, my podcast. This is another solo episode. The last one I did last week was the first one I've done in 3+ years. I thought it went okay. So hopefully you'll hang in there with me for one more before I bring back the interviews. Now, I've talked to hundreds of managers over the years, and I hear this common refrain of, I don't have enough time. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing. It's understandable completely. We don't have a lot of opportunities to practice. We don't always get the instruction that we need on how to do leadership. Additionally, there's performance pressures, there's time pressures. If that sounds familiar, I know I've been there. I've tried a lot of techniques over the years, a lot of tools over the years, and I've had some success and some setbacks, but I've also had the chance to talk to lots of leaders about the tools that they use too. So after years of hosting the podcast, trying out tools myself, interviewing terrific leaders, testing tools, etc., I've identified what I call 10 game-changing tools that are going to help you with this leadership trait of ours. They solve these exact problems. Now, these aren't random recommendations. These aren't sponsored links at all. There's no relationship here. These are tools that I personally use or I know enough about to recommend. And I'm including a link to each in the show notes. So if you hear something that resonates with you, just go ahead and head over to the show notes and check out one of these tools. I'm sharing my leadership toolkit with you because I want you to be able to get back your time, elevate your performance, show up as the leader that you want to be for your team. So I shared 5 different tools last week. If you missed that, go ahead and check out that episode. This week, we got 5 more to round out the list of 10. Let's go ahead and start with BetterUp. BetterUp is all about developing people proactively, and most managers don't know how to do this. Again, not their fault. We didn't teach you how to do this. And if it sounds like you, this is something that we can do something about. Now, we often promote our high performers into these leadership roles, but then we don't necessarily make the investment. And what I have found is that coaching is an incredibly powerful technique that you can use to develop both yourself and your direct reports. My coaching background is that I studied coaching at the highest levels, PhD level, for many years. And I really got into the science of it and understanding why it's such a powerful intervention and why it really works. And in 2011, I conducted an early study on technology-assisted coaching. How can we use technology to break down distance, increase convenience, and really produce similar coaching outcomes? In my case, I was studying goal attainment as well as level of hopefulness and other types of personal satisfaction. And coaching works. It's really powerful for a lot of different reasons. Now, I find that a leader's chief responsibility is developing other leaders. So this is the thing that we need to expect of ourselves. We need to make the time to do it. And there are specific techniques to do that. A coaching approach, in my experience, wins over a directive approach when it comes to developing people every time. Instead of saying, here's what you need to do, that's going to erode a lot of that accountability. That's not a very motivating thing on the other end. But coaching takes a little bit of a different approach. It's what's known as a cognitive behavioral approach. So it's how we think, how we feel, how we show up, what we do. There's a relationship between all of these things. Coaching understands that. It's also very solution focused. It's very positive in its framing. It's very constructive. It propels us forward. And it also creates accountability and it boosts follow through on the part of the coachee. In this case, could be a direct report, for example. So as managers, we need both personal coaching for ourselves and we also need the ability to coach others. And that's really where BetterUp comes in. BetterUp is a scalable solution for busy managers. So when you think about this utility-based style coaching, how do I use technology to help boost the convenience, the access, and connect coachees, in this case, could be direct reports, could be myself as the manager, with professional coaches, really powerful. Very flexible, very convenient format to be able to use technology in that way. And it's one of those things where I can do coaching for, let's say I'm going through a specific time where I'm adjusting to a new role or I'm struggling to adopt sort of a more directive approach with my team, whatever it might be. There's a lot of flexibility for different types of things we can do in our coaching. And if you commit to doing the work and working with the coach, you're going to see an ROI on that coaching every time. But the challenge is a lot of times managers don't know, like, how do I have time to do the coaching? Do I know the techniques to do the coaching? In this case, working with outside coaches can provide a little bit of a third party. There's certain advantages to that as well. So this is where you might consider giving BetterUp a look. It's definitely taking advantage of tools that I didn't have back when I was studying back in 2011. But I think the entire utility coaching space has really evolved, and it's very promising to think that we have access to these professional coaches in a whole new medium. Really, really powerful. Let's go on to the next one. Speaking of investment, let's talk about financial management. Ooh, that sounds exciting. Well, the reality is that administrative tasks really steal from our leadership activities. If you think about spending an extra hour doing something admin related, that's an hour you're not spending either investing in yourself or working closely with your team. Now, finances and specifically expense management is a reality of every business. It's a reality for most managers, most employees. At some point, if you're spending money, you've got to account for that money. Now, the reality is that the faster that we can dispense of this sort of financial, administrative, expense tracking kind of work, that frees up our time to do more of the actual leading. So we want to walk that line. We don't want to neglect the value of admin work because we need administrative work to be able to work inside of the system, but we also don't want to overspend in that area. And that's why I'm recommending RAMP. Financial hygiene is really, really important for any organization, for any team. And what that means is that we need these really high levels of things like transparency into where the budget is being spent, reporting out, how do we summarize these things, how do we aggregate across different teams or categories, et cetera, and compliance. We need rules basically in lots of parts of the business, and financial management and expense management is one of those things. So middle managers are often caught between senior leadership, who typically sets a given budget, and they also have requirements for certain controls. These are just things that come with the territory. But also then, what about the team's needs? So where are we spending the money? How are we spending our time to manage the money? That becomes really important. So where RAMP helps is, most importantly, it saves time. Processing expenses is a natural reality of the business. We need to be able to do it well. We need to be able to do it expediently. So by automating some of these critical financial tasks, this is what RAMP does really, really well. So when you think about a delightful user experience for those of us who aren't in finance, how do we make it easy to categorize, submit, classify, declare, upload receipts, all these kinds of things? How do we make it easier and faster to do that? That cuts down on these non-value add activities. And it's not that they don't add any value, they're necessary, but we just don't want to overspend on that time because you'll never get that time back. And there's things that only you can do with your team. So if you think about spending an extra half hour, it adds up over time because you're fumbling around with certain tools. That can become really detrimental to the time that you want to be spending with your team. So making sure that we get the necessary financial controls using a tool like RAMP, but then also being able to preserve our precious time for leadership activity. So when we make expense management as painless as possible, then we can focus on our people. All right, let's shift gears entirely and talk about tool number 8. This is Miro. Miro is something that I couch under the heading communicate visually. So think about a visual medium. It's also collaboration as well. So oftentimes I find that either hybrid or remote meetings, they can be a little bit, let's be honest, they can be a little womp womp, right? They're not quite the most exciting things in the world sometimes, but we have important work that we need to do in them. How do we make them more effective? Now, Miro is basically what they call an unlimited canvas. So imagine just a gigantic whiteboard, and you're able to use different diagrams, text, tools, sticky notes, all kinds of things to really do your brainstorming in what I call the broad light of day. Now, Miro is something I use every week, whether I'm having work meetings. I'll talk about some other uses as well. Miro is definitely one of my go-to tools. And I also manage, outside of my work life, I manage my personal life using it too. Some of the ways that I use it, for example, let's say that I've got a team meeting coming up, and it could be a large group, small group. To me, the bigger the meeting, the more forethought you need to put into that meeting. And Miro is a great place to kind of get yourself organized to have a really effective meeting. So I'll plan out my boards, as they're known, ahead of time. So basically everyone's going to get a login. If they don't have one already, they're going to come into a board that I've created so we can all use this online collaboration space. Now, on the board, I will have placed exercise instructions. For example, let's say I want to have a brainstorm about a product feature or something. Then I would be able to set the frame for the meeting right there on the board, because as I explain it out loud, which of course I love to do based on myself being a talker, somebody's not going to be paying attention. They're going to come back and say, what are we doing again? So instead, I'd like to put the exercise instructions, at least in abbreviated form, right there on the board. But I'll also pre-stack stickies, different color codes, maybe if I'm using it, shaded areas, timers, something known as frames. These are ways you can control a certain portion of the whiteboard, if you will. And I'll even hide specific frames so that I can unfold the information. Let's say I have a 3-part exercise. I might hide parts 2 and 3 when we start in the beginning, keeps everybody really focused. And I've put a lot of forethought into that. It doesn't take a long time when you think about how much time is collectively spent in a meeting. If you've got 8 people in a meeting, it's expensive. You want to make sure that you've done the homework up front. So the other important thing about Miro is that it levels the playing field. A lot of times you'll have teams that are a mix of extroverts like myself who love to talk and just throw me a random question, happy to field it on the fly. But others who are more introverted are like, I'd prefer to have time to think. Don't put me on the spot. And we want to make sure we're catering to the needs of all of our team members. So Miro in this way levels the playing field. You don't have to be the most senior. You don't have to be the loudest. You don't have to be anything, because the ability to collaborate using a whiteboard space like Miro and putting in the different types of sticky notes or idea generation or categorization, or if you say drag these stickies to their relative importance section on this board I've created, everybody has the same level of access, which is really, really important. I find that Miro works whether we're remote, whether we're hybrid. We just make sure everybody has their laptop in a given meeting room. You can work on site too, because it's a great place to document a lot of the proceedings, even if you are together in the same physical space. So regardless of where you're meeting, having access to a tool like Miro, really, really important. Additionally, once your brainstorm is done, your collaboration is done, you can take a link to it and you can put that in sort of inside any document, a Slack channel, a Google presentation. You can always refer back to it later, so you can really take full advantage of that sort of cross-linking. Really, really important. Now, some of the personal applications I mentioned, I use it even outside of work. I have my vision board. I'm a big believer in vision boards and being thoughtful about our intentions. Some people are all into manifesting these days, whatever you want to call it. But having an idea of what you're trying to accomplish in your life, I don't think is ever a really bad idea, getting very specific about that. So for a long time, I've had my vision board. I update it every year, and I like to have that in a visual medium, one that's very flexible like Miro. I'll also map out any of my presentations, my workshops, anytime I'm creating large format content and I really just kind of need to get my head around it. I find that Miro is really great for that. It's got great color-coded stickies, different sizes you can use, lots of great things there. Additionally, I do a lot of trying to communicate visually, and so Miro can help me do that. I create visual strategy maps. I'll create frameworks that I can explain through Miro. Very quick and easy to share a link, and it can support my talk track, so to speak. And Miro also has on board great templates that you can use for different types of brainstorming activities, productivity tools, planning tools, all kinds of great stuff in their gallery there. You can get those templates if you need a little bit of extra motivation or insight. So some of the different technical benefits as well, it really links everything together, I find. You can put, for example, links out to a Google spreadsheet or to a file or some other external web link or some research that you've done. All that can either be brought in picture format, you just take a snapshot, and a link out if you want to go deeper. All that kind of stuff can happen all through Miro. And additionally, there's mobile access. Now, I don't do a lot of writing on mobile, but the other day I was at the grocery store, I popped up my vision board. I just wanted to refresh myself as to some of the things I was working on and get a little quick jolt of motivation. Totally can do that, nice and easy. Syncs across all devices, so whether you go from desktop to laptop to mobile to whatever, to meeting room, conference room, etc., works really super well. And you can even collaborate with people who don't even have Miro access. They just get an anonymous way that they can weigh in, and that can be great as well. So I absolutely love Miro. You can tell how enthusiastic I am about it. I found that it really supports a lot of flexible uses, but when you need collaboration, you need visual communication, you need to organize your thoughts, definitely think about Miro. Now we'll go on to another tool, tool number 9. We're up to number 9 already, which is Zapier. Zapier is, you can think about as automating these routine tasks. I find that repetitive tasks really steal cognitive cycles from me. They steal time from my leadership. And something that I think is increasingly important for leaders, which is personal branding. Now, I'll talk about that a little bit. Zapier, let's back up a second. Zapier is designed to be this integration tool between lots and lots of different tools. So for example, if you said, I use Google Calendar and I also use a social media scheduling tool like Hootsuite. Okay, there's an integration for that. How do you get those two tools to talk to each other if they don't have a native integration? Well, Zapier kind of plays this intermediary role. So all of a sudden you could say, every time there's a Hootsuite social media post, I want you to create a Google task in my Google Calendar, or however that works. So different ways of connecting disparate tools, and you're talking about literally hundreds and hundreds of tools that can now work better together, with Zapier being the intermediary through what they call Zaps. So you design a Zap, and it's basically saying every time this happens, connect to this system and do this other thing. So that's a great way to think about how you sync and coordinate all of these different systems. So I find, going back to personal branding, for leaders at every level, personal branding is really important in a post-AI world, because there's so much access to information. What we know is less valuable now than how we can move people. So I'm going to talk just real quickly about Zapier and how I use it when it comes to personal branding. But just know that as you put your personal brand, your leadership philosophy, all the great things that your team is doing, celebrate their wins, you're doing that on social, they get the lift of you having celebrated it. But also it makes recruitment easier, makes it easier for you to increase your influence, because you'll be known for your point of view, these types of things. And you'll be trusted, not for what you know, but for who you are and how you can move people, like I said before. So we need to be able to think of ourselves as thought leaders, every one of us, when we are in this leadership role. So as an example, when it comes to using Zapier, you might find that if you have a newsletter that you've started, you can do a lot of automation when it comes to the newsletter. Or you can put people on special lists, like maybe you have a Google spreadsheet, and you can have, every time I add a row to the spreadsheet, I want you to, send a link to the LinkedIn profile to my email. Well, whatever it is you're trying to do, there's ways of using triggers. And you can have Zaps that run in the background, just watching for these triggers, or checking every 15 minutes to say, did you add something to the spreadsheet? Yeah, I added a company to the spreadsheet. Great. Go out and do some research. Maybe you can trigger an AI search. There's lots of things that can happen, but it can really enhance your personal branding. So for example, if you were to say, every time I plug in the URL into a given spreadsheet where I'm doing my research about my industry, I want you to send me and email me an AI summary of it, so I can kind of get my head around it a little bit. That could be a great time saver for you. And a Zap might help you connect your favorite systems to one another if they don't have a native integration. So I think it's perfect for managers, because there's so many connectors that are available out of the box. There's a handy Zap builder inside of Zapier as well. So you can just kind of drag and drop and fill out some simple forms. You don't have to have a technical background at all. So that's really, for a lot of us, that's super welcome to hear. And it's automated in terms of how it does things, whether it's to organize certain documents or organize certain processes in your life, or in this case, like strategic relationship building, the way that I've been describing it alongside personal branding. So we all need to think about ourselves as thought leaders, or at least highly efficient people that use systems in a smart way. Those systems don't always natively talk to one another. Zapier fills in the gaps, is how I like to think about it. So we'll move on to our last tool, our tool number 10, which is all about time management and scheduling. And think about your calendar specifically. This is reclaim.ai. So a former colleague of mine, Patrick, was a co-creator. I didn't even know it. I had a problem I needed solved. I signed up for this solution, and I came to find out later, oh my gosh, Patrick built this. This is amazing. So I signed up because I was struggling with calendar management. The reality is that you have multiple aspects of your life. So in my case, for example, I've got my work life, but I've also got a school life because I teach at Boston College. But at the same time, I've also got a personal life and things that I need to do in my personal life. Well, that's 3 different calendars. In my case, they're all Google calendars, but they wouldn't have to be, but they are. And so now how do you start to decide, like, where is my time really being spent? We've seen this real collapse of work-life balance in many cases. It's hard to keep aspects of your life. Like sometimes I do work on the weekend. Sometimes I do, life stuff, have to go to the dentist, whatever, during a work day. These things happen. So how do you sync all of your calendar views and worlds together? I was having trouble with that, which is why I signed up for Reclaim. Now, basically what happens is you create these connectors between all your calendars with whatever rules that you'd like, and you can see a composite view. So now whether I'm looking at my work or my personal calendar, I get to see my whole collective view of all my calendars in the way that I want. And if there's ever a time when you're like, I have an event that I don't really need to show up in a different calendar, you just add a little hashtag no sync. You put that right in the title or in the description of the event. And then Reclaim knows, okay, I won't move that one over. I won't sync it across your calendars the way that I normally do. Reclaim also gives you analytics about where your time goes. And this is really important for us to reflect on where our time is going, how we're spending it, where could we be more efficient, for example. So it's making these productivity, these focus recommendations. So it's kind of this co-pilot, if you will, or an assistant who's kind of looking at how you spend your time and where that's working. And that's pretty powerful. Now, there are other integration benefits too. You've ever had that time where you're trying to find time with somebody to book like a Zoom meeting or something, or even an in-person meeting, and you do that, well, can you do next Tuesday? No, I can't do next Tuesday. That back and forth tennis match, it's awful. Well, Reclaim will give you a scheduling link. So you have a lot of configuration with it, rules that go with it, certain types of actions. You can create different links for different types of situations that you need. And so I use it, for example, with another different tool called Schedule Once. It's one I've used for years and years, even before I had Reclaim, for scheduling podcast guests. That's really the only time I use it. But it automatically, because of thanks to Reclaim, it will book my time in my work calendar for the podcast, all these kinds of things. Additionally, I've got a separate integration where inside Todoist, which I talked about in the last episode, my to-do list manager, if I put a date and a time when I expect to do one of my tasks, Reclaim picks that up and it pushes it to all my calendars so that I know that I'm fully blocked to do that task. Additionally, there can be this automatic Zoom meeting creation, et cetera, if you decide that you want to have web conferencing as part of your links. I just really can't say enough about how it's allowed me to really manage my world when it comes to calendar and time in a very, very customized, very flexible, very powerful way. Additionally, they're always adding these new features. So they're constantly evolving the product, which is really nice. So it's really a game changer when it's come to being organized with my time. I'll tell you, people now marvel. They'll tell me, like, how do you get so much done? Well, it absolutely would not be possible without these layers and layers of smart tools. So I've come to embrace this philosophy that it's okay to have complex systems and complex system setup if it means it can simplify the thing we're going to do hundreds and hundreds of times. Literally hundreds of meetings people have booked time with me using my scheduling links, for example, and I'm duplicating all these different calendar blocks using a tool like Reclaim. So if I'm going to do something 100 times, it's worth the complexity of setup, what might sound a little bit onerous, if it's going to save all that time and make things simple for me where I just don't even have to worry about it anymore on the other end. So don't confuse complexity with simplicity. It's worth investing up front in complexity if we're going to get simplicity as a result. So there you have it. 10 tools of the leadership trade. I hope you enjoyed them. Everything from Todoist, which helps me to get my tasks organized, all the way to Masterclass we talked about last time to keep you learning, Reclaim in this episode, talking all about turning your calendar from a foe into your best friend. So here's what I want you to do right now. Pick 2 or 3 of these tools that really speak to your biggest pain points. What challenges are you having right now? And focus on those. Don't try to implement all tools at once. That's just a terrible recipe for overwhelm. Start with the ones that you think are going to give you the biggest immediate impact. We need tools to help us tame some of the complexity of our life and to make us more efficient and productive. And remember that leadership itself is a journey. And we need to constantly be on the lookout for things that make it easier to manage our time, to manage our energy, to manage our capacity so that we can show up as the leader we most want to be and really benefit our team around us. Our people are counting on us to be at their best, and these tools will really help you get there. So I hope this episode helped you. And if it did, please consider sharing it with another manager who might be drowning in their own chaos. And remember, don't manage the business when you can lead the people.